The Antifa activist takedown. Portland on edge after U.S. Marshals shot and killed an Antifa demonstrator wanted in last week's murder of a pro-Trump supporter. Authorities say he was armed and trying to flee.
Tonight, officials in Portland calling the latest violence a tipping point.
This is an all-hands-on-deck moment, and I think we would all agree that we need to work collectively to stop the violence in Portland.
Overnight, U.S. Marshals shot and killed the man wanted in last week's shooting death of a pro-Trump protester. The Marshals swooping in to arrest self-described anti-fascist Michael Reinoehl in Washington State.
It just sounded like 4th of July going off. There was just probably anywhere from 20 to 30 gunshots.
Officials say he brandished a gun and tried to flee in his car.
There was shots that were fired into the vehicle, and the subject fled from the vehicle, at which time there was additional shots that were fired.
Reinoehl was pronounced dead at the scene. We learned of the shooting as Portland endured its 99th consecutive night of protests.
They pushed the crowd back, made what appears to be at least a couple of arrests.
Reinoehl's killing came just hours after Vice News released this interview with him in which he called the killing of pro-Trump activist Jay Danielson self-defense. Danielson was part of a pro-Trump caravan of vehicles wending through Portland last Saturday, clashing with Antifa and BLM protesters.
We just spoke with the head of the police union here who said that tensions are at a boiling point. And when I asked him what the chances were of this weekend passing peacefully, given that right and left-wing activists were flocking into the city, he said slim to none.
Tonight, breaking news as tensions escalate in 2 American cities and authorities brace for another night of potential violence. Portland at a boiling point, pepper spray and police batons during another night of clashes, and new details about the Antifa activist accused of killing a pro-Trump supporter before he was killed by U.S. Marshals. The new evidence from surveillance images. With protests in the streets and tensions boiling over on both coasts. New video from Portland, Oregon shows police firing pepper balls at demonstrators last night. 100 straight nights of unrest there. At the same time, self-proclaimed Antifa activist Michael Reinoehl seen in newly released surveillance images stepping off the sidewalk moments before police say he fatally shot pro-Trump supporter Jay Danielson as he passed by. A neck tattoo reportedly helped identify Reinoehl, who was killed Thursday as U.S. Marshals moved in. At the same time, in Rochester, New York, outrage over the death of Daniel Prude. And this disturbing police video shows the 41-year-old black man handcuffed and hooded before he appeared to lose consciousness. Overnight there, the scene grew chaotic with fireworks ignited and diners chased away from an outdoor restaurant. And like Portland, there were clashes among the protesters. One driver appears to pepper spray some in the crowd. Both cities now bracing for potentially more violence tonight. We begin in Portland with ABC News Chief National Correspondent Matt Gutman.
Portland is a city on edge, bracing for a night of chaos and violence. Yesterday marking the 100th consecutive night of protests, demonstrators lobbing balloons, taunts, and projectiles, police eventually responding. First with bullhorns, then rushing the crowd with batons.
And now here it goes. Wow. You can see them make arrests right here. They're arresting these folks right there. We're backing up. Okay, we're backing up.
Pushing hundreds back with smoke grenades and rounds of pepper spray.
They're firing those pepper balls right now.
Authorities expecting both right and left-wing activists to face off tonight. Last Saturday, caravans rolled into Portland with pro-Trump flags, clashing with groups protesting against racial inequality.
What do you think the chances are that this weekend ends peacefully?
I think they're slim to none that it ends peacefully.
And last weekend's fatal shooting by a self-described anti-fascist, bringing the city to a boiling point. Tonight, new surveillance images unsealed by the courts appear to show accused gunman Michael Reinoehl waiting to ambush Jay Danielson in a parking garage. Danielson walking past with no apparent contact. Danielson appears to be holding a can of bear spray and a baton. Authorities say the next image shows Reinoehl emerging from the garage, reaching into a pocket in his waistband. Moments later, that shooting. On Thursday, U.S. Marshals killed Reinoehl while issuing a second-degree murder arrest warrant. Authorities say he was armed and attempting to escape. And in an interview with Vice News published just hours earlier, Reinoehl defended the shooting.
Totally justified.
This BLM sit-in behind me has the feel of almost a community picnic. And across town, there is a somber memorial for Jay Danielson, that pro-Trump supporter who was gunned down 7 days ago. But officials tell us it's going to look very different tonight. And of the 100 continuous days of protests and violence, they say they're most concerned about tonight. Lindsay.
Matt Gutman, our thanks to you. And as Portland prepares for what the night may hold, authorities are gearing up in Rochester, where the officers involved in Daniel Prude's death have been suspended. But some say that's not enough, and they're demanding criminal charges. ABC's Trevor Ault reports from Rochester.
Chaos in the streets of Rochester. Tonight, the city bracing for more intense protests over the death of Daniel Prude, a counter-demonstrator seen spraying protesters with an unknown substance, one protester jumping on the car as it hits him. And demonstrators storming this restaurant overnight,
nobody's hurting y'all. We're shutting the party down.
Throwing chairs, sending diners fleeing for cover.
I don't think that it's a fair comparison to say that this was a violent protest.
Alyssa Bileski was among those marching.
A lot of activists are saying is that maybe it was bad, but it's small compared to what happened to Daniel Prude.
Yes, I agree with that.
Police declaring an unlawful assembly, deploying pepper spray, firing pepper balls to break up the crowd. At least 3 officers injured and 11 people arrested, 3 of them facing felony rioting charges.
Anger in the streets, the Labor Day protest in Portland. After another night of unrest there, mattresses torched outside a police station, dozens arrested over the holiday weekend, and in Rochester, New York, 1,000 marching for justice in the Daniel Prude case. Black Lives Matter demonstrators holding a Labor Day march as Trump supporters gathered to caravan in their vehicles. Overnight, protesters set fire to a mattress after clashes ramped up this weekend.
Overnight, BLM and anti-fascist protesters torching mattresses outside a police station.
Protesters have lit this mattress. This one is about to go. And behind them are police officers arrayed. Behind them is the North Precinct.
Police soon marching in. It was the 102nd night of consecutive protests here. At least 74 arrested this weekend. Protesters turning fireworks into cannons, blasting police, and in a significant escalation, lobbing gasoline bombs.
Oh my God!
One demonstrator caught in a splash of fire. Bystanders struggling to put out the flames. Police in full riot gear blanketing the streets with tear gas.
See that cloud of yellow mustardy-like smoke? The entire corner here was lit up.
And in Rochester, there is also simmering unrest. That after 4 nights of protest demanding justice, today, President Trump criticizing both cities' handling of the protesters.
They throw rocks, they throw cans of soup, they throw lots of hard objects, and rarely does anything happen.
Tonight, a convoy of President Trump supporters gathering in Portland.
It's time for us to stand up.
Clogging the roads by the hundreds. BLM demonstrators also gathering there to mark Labor Day.
Tom, it's unclear where the BLM protests are heading. There really is no end game in sight, but you can see this massive pro-Trump caravan splayed out behind me on the highway. Interestingly, they were supposed to head south. They're now heading north towards Portland, and there is some concern among law enforcement that this could somehow trigger violence again between right-wing and left-wing activists.